We're also looking at Apple this morning because we're always looking at Apple.
Always.
Evercore ISI reiterating their buy rating and a $250 price target on the stock. The firm saying the company had another good month for the iPhone. You're taking a look at shares up by about 1.5% right now. Okay, so another good month for Apple. I think it's going to be a larger question, though, of how many people are waiting to get into the new iPhone because of the promises that they were making at WWDC. Is generative AI enough of a demand generation driver for Apple in the next inflection
Well, this
point?
data is pretty compelling. Shipment data up in May, according to Evercore ISI, 40% year over year, coming off a growth rate of 52% in April. That's good, suggesting that this acceleration is easing concerns about Apple's position in China. I mean, China has been just a weak spot for Apple, at least for the past several quarters.
You know, I was reading this note, and I was thinking about another note we saw from Mike Kantrowitz on Wednesday about he doesn't want to talk about the S&P anymore. And because the S&P is all AI, right? And I'm reading this note, and it's like, okay, we want to do the AI iPhone upgrade super cycle. But go back in time a few months, the story was Apple's not playing in AI.
They're totally irrelevant.
That's why the stock is lagging.
Irrelevant.
And you sort of wonder, if we start to sour on the AI theme even a little bit in the second half of this year, wouldn't it be great for Apple to just go back to talking about regular iPhone sales in China, in its biggest growth market, and they don't have to worry about AI? They make a ton of money, they pay a dividend, they buy back a ton of stock. It's a safe place as an investor to say, hey, we're overweight Apple. It was not very fun to say that a few months ago because there, again, was not, quote unquote, an AI play. That story, obviously we've seen the stock chart, since late April has really turned around. But being a more conservative entrant within that field and just getting back to the basics of selling a lot of people, a lot of iPhones, and a lot of services related to the iOS system, maybe that's the best play for Apple.
Yeah, who would argue with Warren Buffett? I mean, big time holder in Apple. Guy knows a thing or two.
Well, somebody else executed the trade. He probably just had to sign off on it. But, at the end of the day, for Apple, if you go back in the annals of history, there are never going to be kind of, over the past 2 decades, instances where you look at Apple and say they were a first mover in putting technological innovation out there. They see what the market demand profile looks like. They get a sense of what the fair pricing that consumers who have already bought into their ecosystem would be comfortable with, and then maybe say, well, over time, we might be able to charge a little bit more.
Yeah.
But they've never been, especially under Tim Cook, never been the one to say, okay, we're going to be first in MP3 players, or at least that was back when he was CEO, or COO, excuse me. We're not going to be the first ones to be, fully touchscreen phone, even under Jobs at that point. There were other instances of innovation where companies beat them to that, and generative AI is another instance where they're being extremely calculated, and I think that's where we didn't hear from them for months, almost a year essentially, on the generative AI front, so that they could be conservative to your point, but calculated as well.
Yeah, I mean, and you go all the way back to the jobs report today. If the economy is entering a different phase and markets are entering a different phase, isn't it better for you to have a better core business to talk about rather than to say our story is playing in the next gen of tech? Because rates are high, the situation for your core customer base, regardless of what business you're in, is going to be changing. Isn't it just better for Apple to say, we're all got our Macs on the table and our iPhones on the table?
Well, Julie Sue says the job market's going to stay hot, so she's good.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. All right.